Well, guys, welcome back. Thank you for joining last time. This is going to be part two. We're going to talk about nutrition and how that's going to affect you and help you to live a long, healthy life. So, we got Nick and Josh back with us, and so we're going to discuss that. So, let's jump right into it. So, nutrition. Tell us, why is nutrition important?
Yeah, nutrition is super valuable, right? Because that is the fuel that we're putting into our body and that our body's going to run off every day, right? So much like you have to fill up your car with gasoline to make it run, you need to eat food. And much like you have to fill your car up with gasoline and not lighter fluid, you should be eating proper food in order for your body to function properly, right? And our body's designed to be adaptable to anything that we put into our body, and our body's super resilient to be able to allow us to live despite some of the things that we put into our bodies. Um, but for life to be lived at its fullest, um, we are supposed to be eating the right things and fueling it with the correct inputs. You have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's that old adage, and I hate to even say it, but you are what you eat, right? Not from the perspective that you identify with, right? Like when we're having a conversation of identity, we should not be minimized to the things that we consume as food. But when we think about what food is, like all the way down to the molecular level, that food that we consume is broken down into its components to essentially create who we are, right? From a DNA perspective, like a protein perspective, all of what we are as human beings comes down to structurally the things that make up our food. So we are what we eat. So it matters. It really does matter what we eat.
So, similar question as the fitness. If what is, I mean, there is tons of fad diets. We've talked about just, offline about intermittent fasting. What is that nutrition, general, right? Everybody has, what is that focus that we need to, that, our team, myself, what do we need to like focus on eating? And then what do we need to focus on staying away from?
Yeah, I think we're big fans of balanced approaches that are sustainable, right? And I have not met a lot of people that have tried these fad diets that have sustained them for decades, right? I know a lot of people who have had a very balanced approach to their nutrition that have had amazing results for the long term, right? And so simply put, what I would boil that down to is eating whole foods, right? Foods that you're going to find on the outside of the grocery store. That's your fruits, vegetables, that's your meat. Um, Eating whole foods, eating mostly protein, and not consuming too much food, right? Like if you can fit it on a plate, that's all you need, right? You don't need to go back for seconds normally, right? So if you're consuming the things that God gave us on the earth, God did not give us a package of Oreos to go pick from a tree, right? But He did give us apples, and so if we're kind of bringing it back to the roots, which I think is important when we're talking about fad diets, to not go into the weeds, but to really step back and examine what's the most important, and that's something that you can follow for the long term.
Yeah, and to add on to that, when you think about a fad diet, most of them are very extreme. I think in my head, the carnivore diet, where you're only consuming meat and animal-based products, that's pretty extreme to say no to any fruits, vegetables, wheat, anything like that. And they can be a powerful tool. There can be a time and place for these things. But I would say that we should allow professionals and practitioners to guide us in knowing when the right time or the right place is to use those tools, because they are powerful tools, and powerful tools can do as much harm as they can good. And so whenever we think about these fad diets, we have to consider that there can be very negative consequences associated with going to such a far extreme. that we don't often hear about from Instagram or YouTube.
What are those, because we have several guys that have been on the carnivore diet. We have a lot of people, in the office that do the fad diets,
Yeah.
right? So what are the things that can harm us, if we go do example carnivore diet for 3 months or 6 months?
Yeah, that's a great question. And really, it comes down to talking about like your gut. Specifically with carnivore, if we do it for a prolonged period of time, you're never consuming, unless you supplement like a madman, prebiotics and different probiotics that help our body actually process the food. And so, whenever the good guys aren't in our stomach, in our gut lining, the bad guys have ample opportunity to come in and take over. And so that's when these things can actually begin to cause us more problems than they give us solutions.
And it's important to, if we're doing a fad diet, like you mentioned, to have something that we're going to measure against, right? So that's going and getting baseline blood work, right? And if on a whim you want to try one of these fad diets, then more power to you. Good luck, but let's make sure that in 6 months we're seeing what it actually did to our physiology. Because there's some people and there's some stories that follow these diets and they experience good results. Definitely in the short term, because if I'm eating carnivore, I'm not going to be eating processed sugar,
Yeah.
right? That's not
Yeah.
part of the diet. So if I'm adhering to it, there's going to be some positive that comes from it. But it's very, very vital to make sure if we're experimenting with one of those things, we're actually knowing what's going on behind the curtain and what's happening within our body and how that's affecting us.
Speaking of that, how often, I mean, you hear get a physical once a year, right? I know this is going off topic, but I do think that's a good point. I mean, is that minimum? I mean, I actually do blood work. I think my brother does too, twice a year, just because I like to always see where I'm at and how it's changing because things move quickly. Do you guys have any recommendation on that?
Great question. I'd say twice a year is a great place to start. And it really depends on the context. If you are struggling with some sort of autoimmune issue or some sort of chronic illness, it might be beneficial to be measuring more frequently than that. But for your everyday person that is just wanting to know, what does my health look like in a snapshot, I would say yearly, right? Your annual physical checkup with your doctor, asking for blood work is probably all you need
Yeah.
once a year.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that, just from the perspective that most of the time, if we know something's wrong, it's too late, right? Like we are very far gone, not too far gone, but like, hey, it's going to take a lot of work. So if we're doing things preemptively and proactively, we're going to be better off. There is a lot of nuance to it. Like I myself am working through some like thyroid issues. And so for me, I'm getting specific testing done to know what's going on with my thyroid every 3 months or so. And that gives me direction with the food I eat and the supplements that I take so that I can be really targeted
Yeah.
with those things.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Let me and see if we could do this efficiently. And I say that, what are foods that we must stay away from that are just never good for you? Do we have some of those foods?
Yeah. Yes.
Say it.
Yes, we do. I think the number one is alcohol, right? I think we live in a culture that definitely overdrinks. And I think it's the number one most harmful thing that you can put into your body, literal poison, if I may. And I think a lot of people, and there's some confusion here. Like nutrition is confusing. There's a lot of, like we were told at one point that a glass of wine every night is heart healthy, right? Come to find out with some more clinical evidence and definitely some anecdotal evidence, that is not at all true, at all. Alcohol should be enjoyed, right? I'm not anti-alcohol ever, right? You should use it to enjoy it on occasion, right? But when we're drinking, capping off our day every day with a couple beers or a couple glasses of wine or cocktails, that's too much. That's really harmful to our health. That's gonna destroy our sleep, which is the kind of foundation of recovery. It's going to literally alter our DNA and cause us to develop mutations such as increase our risk for cancer or other like chronic diseases. So alcohol, like if everyone listening to this who drinks regularly cuts back significantly on the amount that they're drinking, that will impact their health more than any other change that they can make in their diet.
Interesting. Very.
Yeah, I think from just a general, broader perspective, and it's a little bit more subjective, anything that makes you just feel like crud, there are those foods where you consume it and you're bloated, you're gassy, you're having a tough time the rest of the night. Your body's communicating with you. And we would all be better off if we better understood the language that our body speaks.
Yeah.
So if food doesn't make you feel good, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So avoid it for that time.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna keep throwing out the culprits of the bad things to eat.
Yeah.
I just want to be very clear,
Yeah, very
right?
tangible. Yes.
Obviously, when we say ultra processed food, we mean most things that come out of a package, right? And that's food that you can't look on the earth and find, and that's food that was made in a laboratory, right? That's cereal, that's honey buns and Oreos, and most people intuitively know not to eat these things because it just doesn't look right, right?
But they taste good.
They taste good, and there is a component, Josh, they make like our minds feel good because our brain is quenching this sugar addiction that it's holding on to, right?
Isn't that the dopamine?
It's dopamine.
Yeah, exactly. It is dopamine. And there's other places to find dopamine, right? And that's exercise, like we talked about. That is, I mean, you do feel good when you're consistently on a good diet, and you kind of break those cycles of this sugar addiction, dopamine addiction.
Well, even making a better decision, like knowing, hey, when I have two foods, the vegetable and the potato chip, when I choose the vegetable, I know that that's a good decision. And so my brain is going to receive that as a reward, and that's a dopamine hit.
Yeah. No wonder I feel good all the time.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we got processed foods, alcohol. Is there any other just like, I've always been taught, white bread, pastas, white potatoes. Like, are there any things that you guys, and again, it always is changing, right? It's
Right.
ever changing, but are there any other just tangible items that's just like stay away from that Coca-Cola, the sugars, just like you said, alcohol? Is there any others?
I think that's a great one. Honestly, we would all be better off if we chose water over the soda. We think about how many restaurants we go to, or even how many cans of soda we have in our fridge. Just drink water. If you drink water, your life will change.
How many ounces of water should somebody drink roundabout? This could be going back to it's different for everybody, but I mean,
Yeah, I'd say a good 128 ounces. That's a lot. It's a lot of water. But that's a pretty standard measurement. I mean, this is, I think, 16 ounces, right? So it's quite a few of these guys, but just sitting here for the last 30 minutes, I'm almost through this guy,
Yes.
right? But it's just, it's again, it comes back to just being mindful of the amount of water you're drinking, right? And if you are, instead of drinking two 16-ounce Cokes, well, boom, there's 32 ounces of water right there that we can add in. Also, to touch on that, you're not going to be as hungry all the time if you're pounding water all day long, right? That's just a little hack. But
what are you guys? So we have a lot of field workers. So they're, going to job sites that are, they don't usually have refrigerators or hold their, food, and sometimes they have microwaves. Are there any just items that you feel like are easy, because a lot of stuff can be packaged, are there any items that you guys could recommend to them that could be helpful, for them to help them eat healthier? As we all know, when we travel or go somewhere, it's harder to eat healthier, right? It's easier. So any recommendations for our field personnel?
yeah, I'll take the more general approach, and then maybe Josh, you can touch on some practical things that they can pack in their lunch. And I think the most important thing for the field worker is to pack your food, to come prepared and bring your food. if you're bringing, even if it's, um, Josh can go into more examples, but even if it's white rice and beans, well, that's gonna be better than going through 7-Eleven and getting a getting a couple hot dogs, right? A couple Tostitos. So the number one thing is like being prepared with your own food for the day. And there's some hacks to kind of go into what you bring, but having that food readily available is the most important thing because you're not going to be subjected to whatever is convenient and cheap, right? Um, on top of that, I think the field worker is not going to be as damaged in their nutrition from what they're eating in the middle of the day as they are at night, right? Because this is someone that's has a labor intensive job. They're moving, and so they're going to burn off pretty quickly what they're eating, right? But it's the going home and eating late at night, then eating some dessert and having some alcohol at night before bed. That's really going to be where they can make up some ground and improving their health is what they do off the site.
Yeah. To the point, I know you guys aren't big Whoop fans, but I've got a Whoop, and anytime I eat late and heavy, especially,
Yeah.
my score gets messed up. And anytime I don't drink much, but if I have a glass of wine, one glass of wine or one cocktail, my sleep score suffers.
Yeah.
It's amazing how those two things,
Like clockwork.
like clockwork, and then I'm not as recovered the next day. And so, anyways, I thought that was just interesting because something you mentioned, and sometimes we do. We eat too heavy too late, and then affects our sleep, which affects so many things the next day. Right? Good sleep is so important. So, anything else that you guys want to talk about nutrition? Any other tangible items that can help somebody plan their day, have their goals? Any tangible items you could help these guys,
Yeah, I mean, I
girls?
think to even go into specifics, like what would I pack if I was out in the field during the day? I wouldn't even look down upon like your classic sandwich. Obviously, there are better options here. And so when we think about food, I think we should always ask the question, like, what is nourishing to me? And when we talk about what is nourishing, we think about kind of the root of that word, like what is nutrient? What has nutrients in it. So when I'm thinking of a sandwich, I'm going to get whole wheat bread that is minimally processed, meaning there are less ingredients in it. A good habit when we're shopping at the store is to just very quickly look at the back of anything that is processed and find whatever it is that we're looking for that has the least amount of ingredients on that label. That's awesome. If you do that, you're going to make a lot of really good decisions. So I'm going to get some bread. I'm going to get some meat, some lean meat, some turkey, roast beef, whatever it is, a little bit of cheese. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes simple is better.
Awesome.
And then on top of that, I think that we can make better decisions when it comes to not getting the variety pack of Lay's chips, but instead thinking, hey, I'm going to grab an apple or I'm going to grab a banana, and then maybe I'll get a couple of real easy grab and go vegetables. I once jokingly told a client that he should get some baby carrots and just tell himself that they're Cheetos. He didn't think that it was very funny, but he actually did it. And he said it changed his life because he could eat as many of those carrots as he wanted to, and it was not going to harm him, right? So that was a beautiful, beautiful thing. But just keep it simple and still keep it convenient. Because at the end of the day, if it takes a lot of preparation, it's not going to be sustainable.
Correct.
Yeah, and to the kind of more sedentary office employee that's stuck at a desk a long time, I'm guilty of this. I love to eat while I work. I also love to move while I work, but eating, like chewing on something, helps me for some reason with my productivity. And I think there's some easy swaps you can make, right? Not having the bag of chips out of the vending machine, but bringing a Ziploc bag of baby carrots. Your cubicle neighbor might not like the carrots, right? But who likes to listen to someone eating Lay's anyway, right? But it's just kind of, if you can see yourself eating this food that you inherently know is probably not that healthy, what's an easy swap that you can make, right? Chips for carrots, chips for almonds, soda for water, or there's all these electrolyte packets that you can drink too if you want some flavor in your water, right? But just those little subs make a big difference down the road.
Awesome. Well, it's funny. You talk about vending machines, and I'm against vending machines. And we just installed our first vending machine in our office. And I'm not the most happy about it because there's some stuff in there that I'd rather not be in there.
Yeah.
So one of them is energy drinks.
Mhm.
Tell us about the two things I want to talk about that I see our team doing is they drink energy drinks and they have a lot of Zins, which is the nicotines.
Yeah.
Tell me about the harmful effects of Zen and energy drinks.
Yeah. So, I mean, caffeine, if you're a professional athlete and you have to undergo drug testing procedures, you will fail a drug test if you have a certain amount of caffeine in your system. And a lot of times these energy drinks have enough caffeine to make someone fail a drug test, right? These governing bodies that are in charge of making sure it's a fair and equitable playing field view caffeine as a drug, and that's on the list of no-nos of things you can take. So I think that's important to frame when we take caffeine. I mean, it is a drug, it is an addictive substance, right? And because of that, the more you take caffeine, the more of a tolerance you have to it. So the less of an effect it has, right? And there's, believe me, there's periods. I'm a dad of 2 kids and soon to be 4. So I've been no stranger to caffeine and occasionally energy drinks. So I guess there's a time and place. But these stimulants, the more you use them, the more you become dependent upon them, and the less your body's able to actually regulate itself on its own, right? And that means without this stimulant, you're gonna feel like crud, right? You're not going to be productive in your work. You're not going to be a very pleasant human to be around either, because no one likes to walk around with a caffeine headache, right? So it's just these things can be beneficial tools. I think Zen's an interesting one. And nicotine in general, these tobacco-free nicotine sources are interesting because there's some compelling research coming out about kind of the neurological effects and dosing it with Alzheimer's patients and things like that. But again, it's a very powerful drug that could be used as a tool to increase productivity and to help you operate better as a human. No one likes to chase around a 4-year-old before 8 a.m. before you have your cup of coffee, right?
So does that mean you need to throw in a Zen with it?
Yeah.
Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Principally, more is not always better, and I think we can. It can just be a really vicious cycle as we start to need more and more caffeine, need more and more of a stimulation, and we become more and more hooked to it. And anything that we're hooked to, that we are dependent on outside of God's word and some good old fashioned steak and vegetables, it becomes a dangerous cycle to get caught up in.
Well, and if I could add to that caffeine conversation too, like we live in a culture that is largely defined by anxiety and depression and mental health issues. And when you think about the effects of caffeine in that it is a stimulant, you have to ask that question, like, what does it stimulate? Well, it is doing a lot of the things inside of your body that are the body's same response to stress and anxiety. And so when we're just constantly downing caffeine, for a lot of people, you're only amplifying the problem that you're already struggling with your daily stress and anxiety. I've known a lot of people who have struggled with anxiety, who cut out caffeine and then didn't struggle quite nearly as much. So understand, like, again, there are effects to all of these things that we put inside of our body and we expose ourselves to.
And there's other things like, you know, you have to be conscious about something like an energy drink or Zen if you have a history of heart health issues, right? If you have a loved one that died of a heart attack, then it's probably important to examine, okay, should I be taking these things? Because we know that long term these stimulants aren't great for your heart. But what also isn't great for your heart is being sedentary and being extremely overweight, right? So getting your weight under control and moving more is also going to help. So it's always there's always a well-rounded approach to these things. You're by cutting out the caffeine that you're drinking isn't automatically always going to make you feel better, right? It's an important conversation, but the most important thing is having a good, healthy heart that can beat and you can breathe. You have lungs that function, and you have a body that's strong and resilient.
So I'm going to go back to the Zen because people will hear what they want to hear. And they just heard, I know what I heard. Good, I could have Zen every day. What is the thought on Zen and, where is that balance? Or, what is too much? What is,
Well,
some,
if I could take a biblical approach here, I just read, I think it was in Second Peter, a verse that said, "Anything that masters you, you are enslaved to." And so I think it's the same conversation with caffeine as it is with Zen. If you need it, then it's probably not a good thing for you.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of self-examination and asking hard questions, because what that's going to get to is, where else do you need to create change outside of removing this in order to allow you to function the way that God intended you to?
Yeah, and we don't know for sure what popping a Zen every single day. I've never taken it, but we don't know what it does to us long term. We know that in the 1900s, doctors were prescribing cigarettes for anxiety because it would calm people down, right? And we didn't know that it was destroying people's lungs and
Filling them with
causing more
carcinogens.
cancer than almost anything we've ever seen, right? So because of not knowing the long-term effects, and it's something that is a stimulant and alters your brain chemistry, you do have to be very, very careful with the amount of these things that we're taking in, right? We know what black plain coffee does over an extended period of time in moderation does, and that's not much to harm us, right? But we don't know with Zen because it's so new. We know what chewing tobacco does, and that's not good.
right.
But I think anything that we don't have long-term evidence for, I'm very hesitant about.
So we'll wrap up. Tell us, is there one thing that nutrition wise that we didn't cover that you guys would recommend tangible for our team to do?
Yeah, I've got one. I think one big thing that most people can just implement today and that impact their health is just not eating after dinner, right? Eat dinner, make that the last meal of the day, ideally 2 to 3 hours before you go to bed, and don't eat anything between dinner and going to bed. And if you can, get some steps in. Right after you eat, if you get some steps in, then what you eat starts to matter a little less, because let's say you had a bunch of pasta instead of a salad. Now you've got all this sugar in your blood. Instead of that being stored and processed as fat, or instead of having this massive insulin spike that could lead to diabetes, now we just burn some of that off because we walk the dog with our husband or wife or kids, and we also got to connect with those people, so that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, I'll go on the other end of the day. In the morning, I think, going back to coffee, I love coffee. One thing I try to do is make sure that I don't drink any coffee on an empty stomach. It helps my digestion, and it also helps me not get those jitters, and kind of talking about anxiety, kind of decreases all those types of sensations. So that's a really, really easy one, is always fuel your body with food before consuming your caffeine. And if I were to add on to that, a little bit of movement first thing in the morning, even if it's just some light stretching, can go a long ways. Thinking about the fact that we're lying down in a bed dormant for 6 to 8 hours and then getting up and not doing much else the rest of the day, we can kind of wring everything out and feel much, much better with just some light stretching or some squats, whatever it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did, and hopefully you guys got some tips, some pro tips from them that you can use in your daily lives. So thank you guys. We love you guys, and we just continue to want to impact your lives.